Hi, I'm Colleen Elliott, and I'm a teacher with Oklahoma City Public Schools. I have taught with the district for almost 30 years, and most of my time has been where I'm teaching now, and that's Smithwoods class in high school. And the other thing that I'm proud of is that I am a member of the union. And if you have not looked into OKCPS you need to, because it's a great community of teachers, and it's a great way to have your voice heard in the district. Okay, so as we're talking about the district, we're going to take a moment to just lean in, and we're going to look at Marzano. Sometimes that seems very scary, but let's take a look at it. I'm going to share my screen. Take just a second, get this in here, and kind of model for you the same way that I would carry on a class. And I start my day with reminding the students that here's our learning goals for the day. So our learning goal is that you're going to be able to understand the Marzano teacher evaluation model and how it supports your teacher growth through feedback, and understand that we have a common language and the organization of how the focus model works and how it serves to support growth and teacher expertise. Also, it recognizes those strategies within the Marzano model that you're already doing, that are already part of your current instructional practice, and learn a little bit more about the 23 elements in the Marzano design. So you already had one evaluation, and that is you had an informal in October. So now we're looking forward to January. And so it also will be an informal, and it's going to be an unannounced again. And one thing to remember is that there's no exact time or window that you're going to really know what day or time they're coming. There's a window. They may say the window opens here, going to close here, which we know it's closing on the 28th. So they can come into your classroom at any point during that time. Oops, wrong way. And so during that, unannounced, the minimum time that they will stay in your room is 15 to 20 minutes. You will not be informed in advance of the observation. So like I said, you'll know the window, but you don't know when they're going to come. And so it will be a typical day. They're going to see what they see. And during that time, they're going to make some notes. And then when you get your feedback from the evaluation, then you know that it's going to come timely and actionable feedback that'll be provided from your evaluator. But you will have the opportunity to make a response, to make a comment. And if you need to have a conversation, you have that opportunity to do that. Don't think that just because they send it to you and they've been to your room, that that's the end of it. If you need to have a conversation, then on the bottom of your Marzano form, there is a place to make comments. You can also reach out to your evaluator and say, hey, you know, right after you left, I was able to get that exit ticket, and I can show you the evidence of what that is, and maybe set up a meeting with them. But it is your time to have a conversation, because the idea is the feedback's supposed to help you. And so it needs to be a true snapshot of what you do. And the results of this evaluation will be used as part of your final evaluation. So the 3 of the informals will go together. 2 will be unannounced. So you already had one unannounced. The second unannounced is in January, and then come April, you will have a announced. They'll tell you when they're coming. Okay. So when we talk about TLE, you want to make sure that you have all the latest facts. So you can go into the district on their website, and you have the opportunity to go to this website here, or you can just go into the main site and head over to the departments and look for the TLE, and you can go here to the link. When you go here, you can actually see the all of the things that are in the TLE and what's expected of a teacher. Also, there is a addition this year because we've made some changes to the TLE, and the MOU is there for you to be able to read. So that is between AFT and Oklahoma City, making it best for teachers. So you can check that out. Okay. And I like to have an essential question. So as we're going to have this conversation, we're going to work off this essential question, which is, Why the Marzano teacher evaluation model? Well, one, effective teachers and leaders in every classroom is the goal for this model. And when you look at the fact that long-term impacts of teachers, if you have an ineffective teacher in the classroom, it is equal to being absent 40% of the school year. Can you imagine students when they miss that much school, what they don't learn? Well, if they have a teacher that's ineffective, it's basically the same thing if they're sitting in the classroom with that ineffective teacher. And so that's the reason that Marzano has so many things to allow you to have a personal growth the way it's written. And so is there a teaching gap resulting in a rigor gap? Yeah, I think we know that too with the pandemic. You know, we were home for quite a while and then the kids came back, but the instruction was different. And with the isolation, there were a lot of things we've had to overcome. So now we have to change our focus and get the kids focused back. And so the things we're going to work on that come into play to help us move from the teaching gap to the rigor gap here and get back on focus is to focus in on standards. And as I will point out to you in the evaluation process, standard-based instruction is something that they look at all the time. And we have those conversations in our PLCs. Instruction, what kind of instruction is going on, the students and their student needs, and what kind of achievement, what's it look like? Okay. And so when we talked about the focus model, it establishes a rigorous standard-based system in every classroom. That way, no child is being left behind. And it also is relentlessly focusing on those student results and with those leading indicators. So that data that we're looking at every time that we meet with our PLC or our teams, we're looking at where are our students at, what's happening, and we have objective-based and evidence-based material that we're looking at. So we have data from the test, we have a data from the CFA, data from everything that we do. How are my kids doing? I'm doing an exit ticket today. I'm doing an informal assessment. You know, those kinds of things give you those feedback. It doesn't always have to be a benchmark, but you are assessing where your kids are. Are they getting it? Is there a success piece? So looking at evidence and also the instruction model, it gives you that pathway of how to scaffold your instruction so that you can get to those complex tasks. But in a bite by bite, little bite pieces, those chunks to get them there. And you probably already do that. So as we start to look at this, you're going, hey, I do a lot of this. Yep, you do. And so you know that it's best practices. And empowering teachers with the tools and the resources to continue growing your practices, because we need to be fed too, not only just our kiddos. So let's think about this. I want you to take a minute, read through this list. How many of these do you already do? Okay, I bet you saw a lot on here. You probably said, yeah, I do vocabulary. Definitely doing note taking and homework. Oh yeah, and I'm having my kids do chunk. I chunk with the kids, and I'm also tracking my kids. Well, look here. It says, when the strategies are used, here is a typical effect on raising student achievement. So look at those gains. So if you're using note taking with your students, 17% better gain in their learning. So that's a big bet. That's a big jump. So if they were not taking notes, how would they remember it? How would they learn it? And so as you start to look at these things, these are the tools that will get your kids across the line. How many of you use graphic organizers? 13% increase in their learning and in their achievement. Tracking their own progress and using their scoring scales to assess themselves and putting that responsibility in their pocket for students. Look at that, 34% increase. So it only makes sense that you take and look at some of these things and say, I'm already doing that. Hey, I used to do that, but I haven't been doing it so much. Now's the time to kind of look back and talk to your team about this right here, because these are the things that need to be happening in our classroom. Okay, so this is what the Marzano looks like when you go inside. And as I pointed out earlier, we know that everything is standard-based. And by looking at this for standard, planning standard-based lesson, this one is one that our planning is going to be looked at every one of the informal evaluations. Is this happening? And also identifying the critical content from the standards. This one is evidence that needs to be seen in every lesson, and then we'll be looking for this when they come in. And then one of the other items at here, notice you plan it, you teach it, and how am I teaching it? What kind of environment has to happen for that to happen? And then this is you. What kind of policies and professional things do I need to do to create student achievement? And so if you look at that, they just make a circle. And all of those arrows all lead to student achievement. So that's what we're headed for by looking at the Marzano strategies. And it is just that. Plan it, teach it, create a learning environment, and maintain your professional standards, and then you do it all over again. It's, I would call, like the circle of life, and like in Lion King. So something to think about. So as you're planning, these are the 4 elements that you need to make sure that you are focusing in on, and how are they going to make you a better teacher. You hear a lot about the protocol. This is what it looks like, and it's all on one page this way. And I actually made a copy of this, and I keep it in my plan book. Yes, I still write paper plans as well as on the computer, just because it can have it in my hand and tactile. But as an English teacher, I also like one-pagers. It's all right here. Don't have to go looking for other things. Here it is. And notice, once I said, here's the planning. So the planning goes to the instruction. It also looks at the learning conditions that are there, and it just circles back around. And of course, taking care of yourself by making sure that you are taking care of your professional responsibilities and feeding yourself. Are you having collaboration? Are you talking to other people? Are you training, getting a little PD in there so that you are getting things that you need as a teacher? I just talked about this a minute ago. Once again, think about it as you're thinking about instruction and having those conversations. You're starting to plan. Plan in these items. Look at the deal of how much instruction my kids can gain. So don't forget about this. I'm not so sure I wouldn't encourage you just to print that out and stick it with your planning. And how do we navigate this protocol? It's a lot, right? So if you were looking at using formative assessments to track progress, this is what you would need to know about how this would be assessed when that evaluator comes in and looks. So it says teacher facilitates tracking student progress in one or more learning goals using a formative approach to assessment. On this side, we notice that there's teacher evidence. On this side, we have student evidence. So this is what the teacher should be doing, and this is what should be observed on the student's behalf. So it's not just you in the evaluation process. It includes both of you. And so with the teacher evidence, the teacher is helping the student track their individual progress on the learning goal. Uses formal and informal means to assess the scores. Scales and rubrics are being used. The teacher charts the progress of the entire class. And then the administrator or evaluator note anything that they saw. If there was other things they saw they were happy with, they might write you some more feedback. What's happening over here with the students? When asked, can the student describe that relative status with the learning goal? Can they use the scale and the rubric? And can the students systematically update their status on their learning goal? So, the evaluator may see that, they may ask those questions, but it takes both pieces of evidence to be able to see the full picture of what's going on in a classroom. So here's the scale. We talk about scales. We need to have scales. There's a scale for each one of your elements. And so When we talk about the scale, it is from not using, which is a 0, all the way up to innovating, which is a 5. And the way that these are scored, not using is one of those that it may not be using it today because it may not be necessary. It doesn't meet the criteria for what I'm doing, so I'm not using this standard or this skill. But it also could mean, and this is when it would be marked as a 0, is that my evaluators told me more than once that they want to see a specific strategy when they come in and one of the elements, and I still haven't done it. And so, at this point, they have to say they're not seeing it, and it needs to be there for what it is that you're doing. So that would be it, and it would be one of those conversations that you and your evaluator would have to talk about. So you're starting a new strategy. Maybe you're trying something new, and you're using it just a little incorrectly, or you're missing a part, then that's going to be a 1. Then I'm still working on it. I'm still tracking my kiddos, and I'm doing everything that I'm supposed to do, but maybe only 49% of my students are getting it. So at that point, it's a 2. But I'm doing everything that needs to be done. I'm applying if I have 51% of my students or more achieving at this, and it's evident that they're doing it. If I have 90% of my class working and I'm doing everything right, then it's innovative. And to help you make sure that you can click all these boxes. Down below are some reflective questions that would guide you if you were struggling or you needed some more help in one of these areas so that you can advance. Marzano is a growth model, and so the whole purpose is if you start out with a 1, that's okay, because you want to grow. So if you're having this trouble and you're having problems, then you can go back in, visit with your evaluator, talk to your team, see what it is that I need to do so that I can grow it to applying. Okay. And so as we go in through as eye observation, I am going to actually stop this and pull up another screen real quick. And I am going to show you how you can get familiar with your actual eye observation. So here you're logged in, you're here. When you go on the first page here, we have all of these things here. And if you look at this, then the first one says home, and then you have observations. If you will go to the preview forms, click right here, it's going to come up. It's going to be able to preview it, and you want to open that up. And as you're planning lessons, you may want to just pull this up right at the time you're building lessons. So we know that we're going to be having standard-based planning. So here's this. I'm going to click on it. So here are the things that need to be there. It says, using established content standards, the teacher plans rigorous class units with learning targets embedded within the performance scale that demonstrates a progression of learning. Gosh, that's a lot. So looking at the verbs, what do I need to do? I tell you, the teacher provides evidence, and here's the way you find that evidence. If you click on these little arrows, here it drops down. Here's the things that should be in a lesson plan or in the planning process. So if you look, here are the suggestions. You're not going to have to do this all by yourself. You can pull this out with your team. You guys can look at this, your lessons plan for teachable chunks. I'm going to integrate. If you're teaching literacy, here are some things. If you're a math teacher, here are some things. We all have to modify. So if I have students that need some modification, here's ways to do that. And here's samples of the evidence that you're going to be able to say, hey, I did that. Lesson plans aligned to the grade standard, targets and performances used. So you can go in here and look at all of these things. So when we say go create those lessons and you don't really know where to go, this is the best place to start, because this is what you're being evaluated on, and it gives you examples of what each of those things should look like. Okay, so I've got this piece, and I said the other thing we're going to look at in every time they come in your classroom for an informal is critical content. Same thing here. So here I am. What are some examples of the instructional teacher? So this is the teacher. And so here are things that I should be doing. And once again, how am I going to assess that? Well, here's examples for techniques of how you're monitoring the learning. What are you doing to do that? So here are some activities. If you're doing grant activities, I'm sure a lot of you do think, pair, share, or you're having kids summarize, or identify between the critical and non-critical. Then look at the student work. What are we doing? Written responses? Are we having interactive notebooks? Are we modeling, graphic organizers? Remember, these are the items we talked about at the very beginning that give you those gains. So using that is a win-win for everybody. Okay. So here are some question things that you should ask. Here's more good stuff. Student evidence of desire. Notice here, percentage of students, and I mentioned to you that the student's going to add in. So if I'm at not using, it says that the share is not called for, but not exhibited. Beginning, teachers are missing parts. Then here we start into that part. Teacher uses the strategy correctly, but less than 50% of their students show that they reach that desired work or effect. And so here we are that we might have been applying, but we didn't have enough kids. Notice applying 50 to 90, and when you get to that 90% or better, innovative. And as I have kids in my class that I need to change some of the instruction for, maybe it's a SPED child, or maybe I have an EL student that needs some adaptation to the lesson. Here are some ideas that I can use. Reorganize the groups, modify the task. Maybe I want to utilize some peer resources. There's all kinds of things there. So it's there for you. So don't forget that you have this tool that you can use at any point. You just don't need to go there to your evaluation of observation just to see the feedback. Here's where you want to go when you want to put those lesson plans in play and you're creating and thinking about, how am I going to do that? Here's a guidepost for that. All right. So let's change back and switch over back where we were. Okay. So just don't forget that's there. So how does the process actually grade out? Well, one, the administrator or evaluator is saying, I see, and this is what I observe the teacher doing. And does the teacher use the strategy correctly? And what strategies the teacher use if they're monitoring, if students are learning at their grade target, okay? And then they're going to assess the percentage. I pointed out to you, the students made, and if you forget, you can just hover over those like I showed you. And then after monitoring student evidence and determining the number of students who demonstrate the desired, does the teacher make the adaptation? So at 3, if I'm at applying and they don't have the students added in yet, then I'm at a 2. Once they look and see the students and they see that I have more than 50%, I have 51% of my kids on target and doing what they need to. So no longer do I have the developing, but now I'm applying. So that piece of a student adding in with what I did gives me an applying score. Okay. And student evidence is assigned the final score on the scale for all elements that are being observed. So it's you and the student and what's going on in the class. It's a full picture. It's not just a snapshot of you or a snapshot of the student. It's a snapshot of the big picture that comes out as your score. Okay, standard-based planning. So it should look something like this. You know, we have our learning goal. We have the success criteria. We tell the kids what we want them to do, but a lot of times they don't know exactly what that looks like. So notice here, represents fractions in a variety of different ways to solve the problem. Then there's examples, use manipulatives, models, you know, and then how are they going to know that they succeed? Well, they use different models to represent the fractions. They explain their thinking and they organize their work. So there's no gap. And this is here so the kids can look back at it during the hour. It really does help them. And so I know right now one of the things that language has changed some and the way we write them. We're going into a focus of using learning targets now in some of the buildings. And I think it's district-wide that you're using the learning target. And so when you talk about a learning target, you are drilling it down to exactly what that student needs to be able to master by the end of the class period. So on this date, the student, when they walk out of that classroom, should be able to say, I can explain what happened in 1950s with the Red Scare and McCarthyism. And so that's another thing that should be posted. If you want the kids to know what they need to be able to do when they walk out of your classroom, it can't be a secret. So make sure that you're doing it. Remember, we saw that when they can track their own progress and keep track of their successes, then that's 34% of a gain by the end of the year. So anything that you can do, kids are very visual and we're audible and we're tactile. Make sure that you're meeting all those things by having things that speak to the student about exactly what you're expecting for them. So making sure that we know the difference between a learning goal and an activity. So let's look at science. So our learning goal, the students will be able to identify similarities and differences between various planets in the solar system. Well, that's what you want them to be able to do. But this is the assignment. And a lot of times we'll write down, they need to watch the video. We want them to take notes. And we think that's our learning goal. But it's not, because this is what they're wanting to learn, to identify some similarities and differences. And so to get them there, then they watch a video on the characteristics of the planets, the moons, and the sun. And then the students take notes and they list the characteristics. Gosh, my tongue is getting stuck here. Read pages 24 through 32 and complete the graphic organizer. So here's your activities that are going to get them to do that. Once again, we're talking strategies that were in Marzano and things you probably already do. Okay. If you need to check out your curriculum, and we have new curriculum maps to use, and there's also year at a glance, and all of the strategies that you need for each of the benchmarks are already created for you. So you just have to go and pick them up. If you don't have one already, download it into your Google Drive. Then you can head on over to the curriculum and instruction, and you'll find that those are there. But as well as that, there is a tab that aligns Marzano strategies. And so if you go here, there's videos, there's all kinds of things there. If you need a little extra on how to do strategies, it's there for you. So this is a great resource. So when you go into OKCPS.org, you're looking for curriculum instruction assessment, and you can either find it using this link, or you can use the drop down for the departments at the top of the page. Okay. Then, like I said, this right here is going to be something that you need to have in the back of your mind at all times. How am I going to use these 23 elements? Which ones do I need to address? Okay. Student achievement, once again, that's our goal, is student achievement and that planning. Okay. So we've talked about all of that. So bottom line is you want to know how you're going to be scored. So here's how the performance level comes out, just like the kids. How do I get that A? Well, okay, here it is. You have a performance scale. The Marzano evaluation is created on a 4 rating system, as you can see. So this top one here, not using beginning, developing, applying, and innovating, that is Marzano. Down below, ineffective, needs improvement, effective, highly effective, and superior are the state mandates. And so to make them match so that there is a way that the scores are reflecting both places. And when you get a score of a 0 to 1.9, then it's ineffective. And so that is not where you want to be. Beginning 2 to 2.9, it needs improvement by the state. And effective This is what you need to be targeting for, and that's the 3.3.8. And highly effective, 3.9 to 4.6. And your score on your final evaluation, if you want to be innovative, is 4.7 to 5. It is doable, and you guys know that you have the tools there. You have your PLCs, you have all of the curriculum things that are on the district website. Hopefully that you also have the opportunity to spend time in your eye observation so that you can see what those strategies look like, how you can be doing that, and working directly with your kids. And like I said, the other thing is then they come in to evaluate and you get your feedback in a timely manner. Spend some time looking at that feedback and make some comments and have a conversation with your evaluator. Because if you are not where you want to be, what do I need to do? You know, that is they're instructional leaders. Let them do some leading. Ask those questions. Okay. So this is how it plays out. And if you need any help, I would be more than happy to help you. I'm at Wisconsin High School. My email is scelliott@okcps.org. I'm more than happy to help you. If you have other concerns or you need to talk to someone about great things going on at the union, Mary Best is your contact at AFT. And I thank you for spending time with me tonight. I wish you the best this year, and have a good evening.